Hey there, it's David Gordon from TheaterMania here. It is Friday, August 7th. I'm here with director Don Hahn. He directed the new documentary about Howard Ashman that's on Disney Plus as of today. It's called Howard. And Don, you had a hand in basically pretty much every Disney animated musical during the Renaissance. Is that fair to say?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I produced a couple of them, and there's hundreds of amazingly talented people at the studio back then who made those movies. So it's not the Don Hahn show. It's definitely a collaboration.
So you worked on Beauty and the Beast, that's for sure. You worked on The Lion King.
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah.
What else did you work on during that point?
Well, the first thing I was really involved in was Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which was before Beauty and the Beast. And that kind of reminded the audience how much that people loved animation, because back in the 80s you couldn't give away an animated film. Right. The audience wasn't there for it. So I think that kind of led to Little Mermaid, which was kind of the breakthrough, I think, for the studio and certainly for Howard.
When did you meet Howard for the first time?
Mermaid had just come out. There was a press junket in Orlando at Disney World and New York. So I met him in New York. We were struggling on Beauty and the Beast at the time, and the movie wasn't coming together. And it was actually we were doing it as a non-musical, so it was very Cocteau-esque, and it just wasn't fun. And so we, luckily there was some time in his schedule that he could take a look at it. And then his work on Aladdin, which he was doing at the same time, kind of fell apart because there were story problems. And so we were lucky to get him. And he and Alan jumped in. So I met him in New York for the first time. What
was he like to work with?
Really terrific. Really, oh man, collaborative, opinionated, difficult, but difficult in the way that someone who has a strong idea of what they want or what is appropriate for this particular story point or this character or this song. So he had a real sense of, what was going to be right for that moment. And he had this encyclopedic knowledge of, musical theater. So he was, it's funny because when you get into animation, you do it because you like to draw and you like cartoons, and you don't necessarily know a damn thing about musical theater. So Howard would come in and sit down with us and go, well, no, this dance between Belle and the Beast is like The King and I, and Gaston is really like Miles Gloriosus, from Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. And so we would have to go home every night and look all this stuff up.
And you don't sit there just like waiting for him to, and then you'd have to go look it up.
Yeah, it was an education, and happily so. I mean, and Alan was along for the ride too. So you get both of them, especially during Little Mermaid. They were both in the studio in Burbank and had an office there with a piano, and so you hear them working behind closed doors, kind of grinding their way through some of the songs. And it was really energizing because to have that kind of musical structure where you're telling a plot in the context of songs was different. We had made animated films that had songs in them, but they weren't musicals necessarily. So he was, by and large, really great to work with. You just had to bring your A game when he was there, and it forced us to do better work, to be really honest. Because if you disagreed with him, which he was fine, he was collaborative, but you had to bring a very strong reason for why you with footnotes, kind of what you were thinking. So collaborative, good guy.
Do you remember the first song that he presented to you for Beauty and the Beast?
Wow. Yes, it was a tape, actually a cassette tape that I still have. In fact, I put it in the movie because I just thought, who holds on to this junk? But I do. And I put it in the movie, and it had Belle and Be Our Guest on the same tape. And it was Alan, and it was Howard singing it all, like singing all the parts. And what's funny is he was really insecure about sending it in because he was like, what? Nobody asked for a 5-minute opening number.
Right.
This is insane. But, when you get something like that and you're a filmmaker and, you have a listen and everybody gathers around kind of to hear what came in the door, it's thrilling because he's solving so many problems for you story-wise. the songs contain so much plot, narrative, and character development that he's really handing you this big gift. It's not just lyrics. It's he's a dramatist and solving all these problems for you. So that was the first thing that came in the door.
The one of the highlights of the movie for me is towards the end, the recording session for Be Our Guest with Angela Lansbury and Jerry Orbach.
Yeah.
And the movie is just peppered with footage like that. Like I had thought about it while I was watching the movie. I don't think I'd ever actually heard Howard Ashman's like speaking voice. I don't think I'd ever like knew what he sounded like until
really?
the movie. And I don't know if it's just that I missed the demos or whatever, but he was like Beauty and the Beast was the first movie that I saw in a movie theater. I was like 2 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess he was gone by that point.
He was. Yeah, he never saw the finished film. He certainly saw the kind of work in progress and knew what the film was and how it was coming together. But yeah, I wanted to have Howard's voice in the movie as much as I could. And early on, when you're kind of stumbling through the process of making a film, you're not quite sure, especially in a documentary, what it's going to be or what the pieces are that are going to tell the story. And one of the first things that became clear is Howard is really interesting when he talks, and Howard's a great storyteller. And so we just did this treasure hunt to find as much Howard audio as we possibly could. And we did. We found wonderful things, everything from answering machine tapes that recorded conversations accidentally to a reporter who was in Orlando for the Little Mermaid press junket in 1989, who called up and said, "Hey, I heard you were making a movie about Howard Ashman. You know, I recorded him when we did this press junket. Would you like to hear that?" Things like that. They're just gifts.
Somebody throwing out their notes.
Yeah, it's so those kinds of things are just like gifts for a filmmaker. And so the more I could put Howard in the movie, the better, and then surround him by people that worked with him or his family. I purposely didn't want to have a lot of Broadway experts. Not that I don't love Broadway experts or critics; they're fine. Right. But I felt like this was probably a more personal story. So his sister, his partner, Bill, Nancy Parent, his longtime assistant, people like that were much more interesting to me to interview for this.
Yeah. Did you I can't imagine the amount of hours that you must have spent at places like the Paley Center just looking for video footage and stuff.
Yeah, it's that's exactly right. The Paley Center, the Library of Congress has his archives and papers, and then a lot of clips were at maybe he did a public access radio show in New York when Little Shop came out, and we found that 60 Minutes did a show on Smile, his collaboration with Marvin Hamlish, and so we found that and just try to pull these pieces together, and then you kind of hang all the clothes on the line and look what you have and try to shape your narrative around that.
When did you say you wanted to make a documentary about Howard Ashman?
I had toyed with it. About 10 years ago, I made a film called Waking Sleeping Beauty. It was about the kind of renaissance of animation at Disney, which always amuses me when people say that, because when you're in a period like that, you don't walk around going, "Wow, what a great renaissance we're having." So back then, that story has a piece of Howard Ashman in it, and it's this wonderful kind of emotional moment. And so that movie ended up being something else. It became about executives and palace intrigue and different things. So from that, I always thought, wow, maybe there's an expanded story about Howard to be had, because we had more material. But that idea sat there for about 5 years. And then I finally felt like there was enough time had passed. I had lunch with his sister one day, which was kind of a breakthrough. So I just, I was halfway through my cheeseburger and I just said, I think I'm going to make a movie about Howard. And I hadn't thought it through. It was kind of impulsive, but I really felt like I felt qualified, not necessarily as a brilliant filmmaker, but qualified as a archivist who had access to all this stuff and access to all the people and kind of knew where all the elements were. And I thought I have to at least try pulling all these things together to tell this story. And that's how it started.
Did you make a conscious, I guess it must have been a conscious choice to have I don't want to call it like the documentary Talking Heads, but what you choose to do is you like do voiceovers as opposed to, extreme close up on somebody's face. Why did you choose to do that as opposed to, the like?
I tried. I tried a more conventional approach just for one pass at the film, and shot just one or two interviews just to see what it would be like. And it really was jarring and pulled me out of the story. I felt like, so much of the material in this movie is from the 80s, 70s and 80s, which is kind of a black hole of media. It was all videotape. You can go back to the 40s or 50s and see pristine footage of Walt Disney or something like that, because it was shot on film, but anything shot on video is pretty much lost. So when you cut from the grainy kind of VHS or 3/4-inch videotape that I had to use to tell the story, and then you cut to a brilliant 4K shot of Don or something, it was really off-putting. And then on top of it, you're seeing Don as kind of 30 years older and overweight. So you're getting all that on top of it. And it was much more effective to stay in the period and just say, we're going to plant ourselves in the 80s and 90s. We're going to put you at the table that I was lucky enough to be at, and let you kind of live with Howard for 90 minutes and experience that. So that was really the genesis of it. And I think it's effective. The gamble really is, will the audience forgive you for not having a traditional, PBS kind of Talking Heads with a narrator documentary? And thankfully they do. It's all about Howard. Yeah,
I thought it really worked, and I liked having the voiceovers as opposed to the traditional format. I think
you don't need to see us, flapping our lips every time we talk. And I think it's much more immersive, I guess is the word. It's films, documentaries especially, they're kind of voyeuristic, and you're in a space where you're a fly on the wall, you're seeing things that you don't normally see, and I just didn't want to break that spell.
Do you have you gone back to watch Beauty and the Beast through the years? Like, have you watched it recently, so to speak, or is that not the kind of artist you are?
I haven't. I've revisited it just out of necessity because we've done different versions. We did an IMAX version. We did a 3D version not too long ago. And then we did a live action version. And so the material doesn't go away. It's been on Broadway. And so you keep revisiting it, and each version is a little different. But I seldom go back and watch the original movies. And it's not because I don't love them, but they are... they're more than movies because you remember the stories and the people behind it. You remember the bad days. You remember the problematic artists, the victories, the brilliant artists. So it's an exercise in introspection and catharsis when you watch those movies that you've worked on. And I think most filmmakers feel that way.
Do you have a favorite Howard Ashman song?
His, the most emotional song for me is the Beauty and the Beast ballad, probably. But as a ballad, it's probably not the most challenging thing he wrote. Some of the songs in Little Mermaid are really special. Under the Sea, Le Poisson, the chef kind of chasing Sebastian around the kitchen. Kiss the Girl is a perfect song. And Ursula's song about, Ariel doesn't even know Ursula exists at the beginning of that song. And 2 minutes later, she's signing her voice away. So those songs are really, oh my God, and I suppose I could say the same about Aladdin and Beauty and Little Shop. But they're so condensed, it's like a fine sauce that he's boiled down into this little 2-3 minute packages that deliver so much content, and those are beautiful to listen to.
Don, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for making the movie. It was just fun to be in the presence of a genius like Howard Ashman for 90 minutes, as you said, and to just be able to learn about the man behind the music.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. That's, I know Ken Burns a little bit and met him because I worked for PBS out here on the board, and And he said, part of the joy of making these movies is you can bring somebody back to life for a while. And for him, it was Lincoln or Teddy Roosevelt or something. And that really struck a note with me that if I could bring Howard back in some form for 90 minutes and let you spend some time with him, that's a worthwhile thing. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you for talking too.
You bet.
And thank everybody for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Have a lovely weekend if you can. Be well done. Thank you again.
You bet. Thanks.
Bye-bye.